the the first question was, how did you approach those re-engagement conversations with youth offending team leaders following the COVID lockdown and following my initial alert? Because I sent out that email, didn't I, saying, look, we're going to have to switch to another method. Start with John, then go to Laura. John, how did you re-engage, if you like, with the service leads?
Well, first of all, it was really useful because I had initial meetings with all of them. So, I knew service leads, so I had that kind of relationship. But the way I approached re-engaging was to have an initial phone conversation with the youth offending service leads. And in the background to that, I'd already created a Microsoft team for each of the offending services. And so what I was able to do is, following that initial phone conversation, say, look, I'm going to put you into this Microsoft team. I'm going to send you an invitation to meet in that team so we can together look at what are the benefits of using that technology so that we can move the program forward. Then I was able to demonstrate all of the different things we could do within Microsoft Teams that would enable us to explore the aspects of the emotion coaching program. And then,
Laura?
Yeah, similar. With Southwark, I created the Microsoft Teams and invited them in. I think flexibility was key as well, though, just saying I'd work around you guys and your needs. The Teams was particularly useful because you could keep notes going in between. You could keep that momentum going. So we could post links to each other quite easily. You could do updates, reminders. And then with Hackney, I did ask for Teams and they were quite regimented in saying, no, we want Google Hangouts. So eventually I just went, OK, fine, let's go for it.
We'll cover that that specifically in question 2.
Yeah,
but yes,
flexibility, I think, really.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the important thing is having that infrastructure ready to go.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And the coaching implication to that is familiarity with Teams.
Yeah.
Familiarity with the features, the new features within Teams, and how to use it. So that's certainly a key bit of learning, I think, for us.
It was also time, wasn't it, John? Because it took us about 2 hours to set up each team because you've got to add every person individually. So, if you're looking at sort of 30 people on average, and it might be more for some schools, it could be up to sort of 50, 100. So you've got to add all of those people in and invite them. And then each time you do a calendar invite, then you can just copy and paste the link. But yeah, it did take a little bit of time to set up. So I think we'll need to allow for that for coaches.
Well, I think we
Sorry, Laura. It's Chris Lavogia. Is there no group? So if you've got the group email, like the school email, because I can imagine, like you say, you'd have 8
to create it.
Yeah,
you have to create it in Teams.
Yeah, they have to be added individually. But there are some specific limitations to that, which we could cover off as we go down through some of the other questions, Marius.
Yes, indeed. And I think also within the blended learning model, it might well be that groups of staff may well be in school. So one link could be opened up on an interactive whiteboard for a group to follow, plus individuals. So again, I think the setting up of a communication, a media platform, will be very much bespoke to the needs of schools. I think that's one thing. But also, I have to say, the skill set of the coach to do that.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Lovely. So 2 now, what are the challenges did different teams initially have in switching to this new way of working, and how were they resolved? So first of all, Laura, and then go to John.
Yeah, it was very much depending on mindset, really, of trainees. So you've got a lot of people who just, well, it's not working, tell me what to do. And then you've got some other people who are kind of going, right, how can I move this forward? So it was being quite patient with people. And I did feel like that secondary school IT teacher going around checking everyone had done everything for a little while. And I think, unfortunately, you do get the odd person as well who doesn't really want to engage in general. So it's quite a good excuse. So you're kind of working on both sides there in terms of engaging them in the content and engaging them in the platform as well. So that was a challenge. in terms of other challenges, I would say, can I talk about the Google Hangouts now? Is that helpful? Yes. Yeah, so on Google Hangouts, you couldn't hear the audio very well when you're sharing your screen. So what we had to do there was on the invitation, if there were any videos that were going to come up, you'd put them as links throughout, and people had to have them up on tabs ready. And so you just go, right, we're going off for 4 minutes, off you guys go, and I'll time it for 4 minutes, then bring them back in again. So as a trainer, that just meant you've got to be really aware of the points you want to talk about from the video. And just keeping everyone in. And then obviously you're also then still kind of watching people's comments coming up and picking up on, you know, if people can't access it technically wise, or if people have got questions. So it's just quite busy when you're doing it in that way. Also, you have to, if you want to share documents through Google Hangouts, you've either got to email or attach it to the invite as well. Whereas on Teams, I could put it under the files, and so people could work on them, adapt them, save their own copies and things. So it was just a bit more fluid on Teams, really.
So let's compare Teams with Google Hangout. You said that if you got a video to show, they had to look at it through their own internet link on their own machine.
Yeah.
With Teams, how do you share your computer sound through Teams? Is it easy? Is there a button you click?
Yeah. You just hover your mouse up at the top, and you get a little thing, and it says share device audio, I think it is. And so every now and then I forget it, and someone goes, I can't hear the sound. You're like, right off.
I know. Same with Zoom, doing Zoom choir rehearsals, exactly the same. Yeah, nightmare.
So there's a hands up there. Look, you know.
Yeah.
The hands up feature is very useful. However, what I discovered is a limitation within Microsoft Teams is that if you're using a Mac computer, the Apple platform, it's not possible to share your system audio in Microsoft Teams, and Microsoft haven't addressed that yet. And so if we have coaches who are going forward and want to deliver training via Teams, they will need to use a Windows machine until that issue has been resolved with Microsoft. So,
yeah. What some of my services found difficult was if they were working in the office rather than working from home, they didn't have access to audio or visual on their work computers.
Oh, what a good point. Yeah. Because some office-based staff, rather than schools, we're used to multimedia with interactive whiteboards and things. But yes, if they haven't got audio and they haven't,
yeah, that was hard.
Well, the other thing there, Marius, is, for example, when we translate this into schools, you know, a lot of senior leaders, you know, they're sitting at their desk with their big computer and their big screen. That's a standalone desktop computer, not a laptop, and doesn't always have a camera on it. Or a microphone. And so, you know, it's great if you're using a laptop to deliver Teams, but actually in a school-based or work-based environment, you're not always sitting at a machine that's got video camera.
Yeah. So, okay, well, that's not a huge issue. People can still participate. It's just not a visual participation.
Yeah.
And they can still see the coach and the coach's materials that are being shown. Yeah. But again, this is another consideration we need to share with schools as they set this up.
Yeah. I ran all of the sessions twice as well to give flexibility. So for Southwark in particular, they had SILS, the PRU. So I ran one session at 1:30 and then one at 3:30, so that way they could have finished with their children. And then with Hackney, I run the same one twice over a 2-week period, so that way they're not, if somebody's on shift, then they're not going to miss it as well. And just recording them as well, I guess, and getting permission for that so people can watch it back if they can't make either session.
Okay. What immediate challenges did you have as an individual when we did it? Now, we've talked about some of the hardware, software, and connectivity issues. We've also your personal readiness to deliver online training. And John, you've kind of addressed some of that in the sense that you were considering the fact that they could hear every word you said again and again and again.
Well, I think what I wasn't prepared for was the personal impact on delivering online training with no direct neuroceptive feedback, if you like, and that does continue to be a challenge because, you know, if you're delivering face-to-face training, you've got that ongoing assessment of the impact or the effectiveness of your delivery in real time. And so what you almost have to do when you're delivering online, like in this kind of format, is ask for that feedback directly.
Totally. And build it into the sessions.
Yeah. So
absolutely.
There's the impact on your personal time. So because they've got that conduit to you through chats and posts, so you've got to have that. you have to think about your personal space in delivery of that training. Now, to some extent, the software lets you do that because you can select your own background, but at the same time, you are inviting people into your personal space. You know, and when we're not TV presenters, we're not media trained in that sense, and it's very disconcerting to speak to a screen rather than a group of people if that's what you're used to.
Yes.
And also, and this is where it's a time issue. You've got to be very aware, I think, that where you are recording sessions, that your choice of words is vital.
Yeah.
So, you know, using that coaching model, being aware that we're giving information and not advice is really crucial, because you can get sucked into an advice giving session if you're not careful.
Yes.
And so
absolutely.
there's personal impact in delivery of this kind of training. I mean, the good news is the more you do it, the easier, the more familiar you become with the easier it is. And you're also then having to keep on top of the technology because it's constantly evolving and changing. And you're having to assess, is that useful, is it not? How do I share that with the people so we can use that as part of our sessions going forward? Like the hands up, for example.
Yes, absolutely. Laura.
I'd agree with John. I think what was really helpful is that John and I had each other to talk to about this. So I kind of went first with it and practiced it with John, and he helped me and said, yeah, this is fine, maybe try this. And then a week later he called me and go, oh, I'm really anxious about this now as well. So I don't know if it'd be worth coaches having like a buddy system or something, just someone who they can run through like a few slides or an audio or something like that to check it, because that really helped reassure us.
Yeah, because we were doing it live for the first time, weren't we? And without the opportunity to practice it. And I think as a coach, you need to have some time to practice this with a trusted colleague.
Yeah.
Agree.
And what also helped was having everyone's videos to start off with, and just I know that the sort of the all background and that personal space is kind of a barrier, but we kind of made it into a way to connect. So we just had conversations with people for the first few minutes of every session, just going, oh, you've got a toddler in the background, how's that going? Building up those relationships, because we were training people we'd never met before. And so it was really important to have 5 minutes at the beginning, and then also I set a bit of a contract at the start as well. And I said, please feel free. If we're working in really different times, if your phone rings, if the doorbell goes, if a child needs to have a drink, please just dip off and do it, because this isn't a normal working environment. And so I set that right at the beginning. And I also just talked about well-being, looking after themselves during the call, and those kind of things as well. So I think it's important to have that conversation and acknowledge we're all working in a really different way, and there's going to be allowances for that.
Absolutely.
And what I discovered as well is, and I've built this into all of my sessions now, is at the end when we've completed the session, I invite everyone to turn their cameras on so we actually can wave at each other and see each other. And because, as Laura quite rightly says, these are people we haven't met before, and I'm very keen that we build relationships, and you can't do that with a blank screen.
No. Chris Lavoie. Yes, you got your hand up.
Hi. I just wondered, when you were talking about the difference between the practical training in a room and this, when you're in a room and you sometimes get that negative or obstreperous or wants to take all the time up, etc., that person, you can manage that when you're in a room with body language, where you stand, all those things that you would use as a trainer. Did you experience that while you were doing this, and were there any techniques that helped? Because you can't do that when you're online, can you?
You can mute them, can't you?
You can mute everybody. I mean, I think it's you develop protocols for how the session is going to run. So, for example, you can say, right, I'm going to mute everyone now while I go through this PowerPoint, and there will be points at which I'd like your feedback. So you stop, you're very explicit about that, and people can use hands up. They can use the conversation part of Microsoft Teams to write their comments there and build in time to come back to that. But what you have to be very aware of as a trainer is, okay, how do I stop screen sharing? Has that stopped recording? Now I need to look at the you have to have duality. It's you have to be quite nimble in doing it. But in that way, you can manage the people and manage the flow.
I think you can manage it pretty much how you would normally, in terms of just saying, it's lovely to hear so much from you. I can hear how excited you are. I just want to make sure everyone's had their turn, to contribute. How about we hear from John now? And that was generally received okay. And then if people were having technical difficulties and kept saying, oh, I can't do this, I can't do that, I would just say, right, just hang on till the end of the call and we'll have a one-to-one, and I'd pick it up that way. So yeah, I think generally you can handle it in the same kind of way. I haven't had anyone being obstructive though, or particularly difficult, touch wood.
No, I haven't either, which is good.
Thank you. Now, availability use of existing training resources, the module units within the bubble, knowledge and tools, and some of the supporting PowerPoints which we'd already prepared. How much more adaptation did you need to do when you moved to blended learning? Start with Laura and then John.
Yeah, I think it was quite a lot, actually. I think I was just thinking about the timing, the kind of conversations we'd have. So whereas normally you could break out into groups and do an activity. So, for example, with I've got it here somewhere, with Hackney this week, we did like a visions and values activity. So we actually had to do this.
Right. Yeah.
So I had to draw it first, because normally I'd be in a room and we could go off and do papers and pens activities. I know, Marius, you have big paper and pen stuff.
I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, so I had to adapt quite a lot of those activities and think, right, how am I going to facilitate that, where they need to go off and actually think about this and draw it or represent it in some kind of way, or do a thought shower, or talk about the top 3 priorities, like the Diamond 9 activity, for example. How do I facilitate that online? So yeah, I think a lot of the materials did need adapting for that purpose. And like John said as well, just to make sure that you were really confident as well with some of the materials, especially some of them were still newish, around resilience and the graphics and stuff like that, I guess.
Thank you, John.
Just echoing what Laura said, really, because for example, let's think about structured conversation training, that we do, where we ask them to, do those various activities. It's not really possible to do that in this kind of format, because you can't walk around over here, what's going on, take those and reflect back. You have to really think about the limitations of the technology that you're using, what can and can't be done. The good news is there's a lot of evolution in this technology, so more and more features are added over time that we can use. I think for me, what's been really powerful are the web quests, Marius. I think
what the video web quests are.
Yeah, really powerful way to go.
Yeah, I think so. I was excited as I was doing them. I was getting more excited, because what it does, it sort of takes your role. It takes part of your role as a coach. It facilitates your coaching role rather than your training and delivery role. Isn't it? So the web quests help the learning, perhaps before a session and after a session. And you can concentrate on making sure the understanding is deep. Maybe.
The other thing to bear in mind is that, the model that we have in Achieving for All is that we are coaches, but we are also to some extent trainers. And it's about making sure that your training skills are commensurate with your coaching skills, because, online training like this is about the delivery of information, and you've got to be good at that, and enhance that.
No, absolutely. Chris Woodhouse asked a question, and Laura's answered it. Does Teams have a breakout room facility?
Yeah, it's not the best. So you can create subgroups within it to do it, but that does take up quite a lot of time and it's a bit more messy. That's one of the reasons why we're going to use Zoom next week for Southwark, because the breakout rooms there is a lot more easy. I think Microsoft said they were going to develop it in April or something, and we're still waiting for a decent one.
I agree. You can create those.
I did one with Zoom the other night, and you can randomly select and put people into groups, and then you set a time limit and it stops them in the breakout rooms. They all come back on time as well. So it was really good.
It is fab.
Yeah, I agree with Laurie. I mean, you can create subgroups or sub-rooms within rooms, and you can allocate people to those rooms. That's okay if you want people to be in the same group going forward all the time, but where you want to move people between groups, or where you leads or heads want to move people between different groups, then it's a bit more messy.
But again, what we need to do is set limits We need to set limits for our coaches so that expectations aren't undeliverable. Yeah. So this could be one of those undeliverables. What we could do this, but in order for our time to be effective and have impact, we won't do this. It'll be up to the schools to organise perhaps those chat rooms and
also that leads to a little bit more work of them doing something in between your visits as well. So rather than doing a breakout room while you're there, saying, right, this was the input now today, then go off for a couple of weeks in your staff meeting, then have that conversation, and then we'll come back together.
Yeah.
You
have to build in more reflective time, don't you? More opportunities for reflection. Go away, try this out, come back. Let's have a meeting to discuss that.
Yeah. Brilliant. I can see a lot of this working on a 6-visit model. I can't see this working on a 3-visit model. That's my feeling at the moment. You know, 6 visits gives you a bit more flexibility as to putting in an hour here or 2 hours there and spreading it, but tracking it over a period of time. But I can't see this working on 3 visits. So that's worth Chris and I thinking about in what we say to customers, new customers and old customers, about what we can offer through blended learning.
On the other side of the spectrum, 18 could be challenging, I guess, just in terms of fitting it in, especially with schools maybe not being ready to start up with learning straight away in September.
Covered a few of these already. What were the challenges? Question 4, faced with delivering it. Okay, so first of all, tracking attendance. Whose responsibility was it, and how did you keep an overview? John first, then Laura.
One of my service leads said, "Oh, John, can you make a register for me of who's attended the training?" And I said, "Well, no."
Good, well done.
Basically, I mean, interestingly, Microsoft have said that you can now do a roll call, and it will automatically tell you, you can download a CSV file of who's attended, what time they joined and what time they left. However, what I've discovered, that only works if people in your team are members of your organization.
Exactly.
If they've been added as guests, which is the only way we can add them, because they're external to Achievement for All, you can't do that.
No, and that's exactly the problem I've had with ICAM and BECSR, the international projects. We've invited people to it, and for example, they can't see a video of your recording.
Yes, the way Laura and I have got around that is we've recorded the sessions. You know, it then uploads itself to Stream. It does the dialogue for you. What we've then done is download that and then upload it into files.
No, I know it's a time-consuming process, but that's exactly what I've done. Okay.
So you can't take a roll call. So I've actually asked my youth offending service leads to do it themselves.
Absolutely. No, fine. Laura, same for you?
But I was a complete snowflake and went, I'll do it.
Oh, right, okay.
So that's the first mistake. Don't say yes to that, because I was trying to deliver my training. Then there's me scribbling down everyone's names as they join in and what time they came, and then someone left, they were ill. So don't.
Oh, Laura, no, we can't have that.
The only way I found of doing it effectively was afterwards. Once I watched the video, it does give the names. Then you get a narrative, you get a script actually on Teams, which is really good. Getting a script afterwards of what everyone said, because then you can pull out quotes and things for materials and case studies. So I just went through that and I made a note of the names. But I've kind of said since then that just doesn't work for me. It's not fair if I'm training and trying to take a register at the same time.
I mean, you can see a list of all the people you've invited, but that's not a guarantee they've all been on the call.
No.
So I've asked the service leads or a volunteer within the group to do that, and then provide that information back to the off service leads, and they've been happy to do that.
Evaluation. That's what I wanted to look at very quickly. Evaluation. Now, Laurie, we have evaluation tools, haven't we, within emotion coaching? But have you broke it down to individual sessions? How do you get a bit of feedback as to how it's gone?
Yeah, so we did the overall, obviously the locality review, and then we've done personal reviews as well that everyone's completed at the beginning. But then in terms of feedback from each session, I keep it fairly informal in terms of we do a bit of a round robin in terms of one thing I've learned or one question I've got or one thing I'm going to try. And then we start every session with what have you done since?
Usual standard practice.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we did do a poll right at the beginning. We just looked at the main objectives for emotion coaching, and we did a poll in terms of what people felt they needed the most. And that helped me direct the training. And we might repeat that in terms of what have you moved on from afterwards. But to be honest, the qualitative feedback you get in each session is a lot more valuable, and it's more, your assessment for learning rather than, your formal assessment.
And going back to a point both of you made right at the start, and we need to keep revisiting as a leadership team, what you're doing simultaneously as delivering emotion coaching training is actually trying to instill a coaching model into the services that you're working with, so didn't have before. Absolutely. That's something that's a whole new conversation which we won't go down yet. So
what I discovered, Marius, is that obviously you can work on documents collaboratively, which is absolutely fantastic. And so what I was going to do initially was to put the locality review up in files. But then I thought, you know what, everyone's going to have access to that, and that's maybe not what service leads want. So I quickly created 3 additional rooms just for the service leads to have access to, where that document sits, because they might not necessarily want everyone in their team, in their organization, to have access to that document. But the poll is quite useful. I was very sort of ambivalent is not the right word. I put it out there as to gauge some feedback in the direction of travel for the training. I think I'd use that in a much more directed way going forward, saying there is a poll there and you must complete this by such and such a date, so that I can begin to get not only the fantastic qualitative feedback that Laura's talking about, but also some quantitative feedback as well. So I'd use that in a little bit more of a directed way now that I've got that relationship going with the teams. And I'm certainly going to be using that with the forums. So creating a poll in Microsoft Teams, pretty straightforward, pretty easy.
Yeah. I think you've got a limit of 5 questions, haven't you? That was the only challenge we found. And then you've got to start a new one.